What if the voice inside your head isn't yours? Not a metaphor, not imagination, but something inserted. A thought that feels like you. A memory that never happened. A decision you swear you made, but didn't. And the worst part, you would never know the moment you were hacked, because the first thing they take is your ability to question it. It begins quietly, not with pain, not with a glitch, but with a feeling slightly out of place. You wake up one morning and everything looks normal. The ceiling, the light, the familiar hum of the world continuing without asking for your permission. But something is wrong, not outside. Inside, a thought appears, soft, harmless. What if I take a different route today? You don't question it. Why would you? Humans generate thousands of thoughts every day, most of them meaningless, random, background noise. So you follow it. You take a different street, and nothing happens. At least nothing you notice. But that's how it starts, because the first hack is never dramatic. It's statistical. Tiny nudges, micro decisions, barely detectable deviations in behavior. In neuroscience, your thoughts are not as free as they feel. They are electrochemical signals, patterns, predictable pathways formed by repetition. Your brain is not chaos. It's a system, and like any system, it can be influenced or rewritten. Scientists have already proven something unsettling. In controlled experiments, researchers were able to predict a person's decision up to 7 seconds before the person became consciously aware of it. 7 seconds. That means your brain decides before you do. Now imagine something else. If decisions can be predicted, they can also be inserted, not directly at first, but indirectly, through suggestion, through timing, through carefully engineered stimuli, a notification at the right moment, a sound, a flicker of light, a word. You think it's coincidence, but it's not. It's calibration. Because to hack a mind, you don't break it. You sync with it. You learn its rhythm, its habits, its weaknesses. And then you whisper, not loudly, not forcefully, just enough to blend in, just enough to feel like you. Days pass, then weeks. You start noticing patterns. You crave things you never cared about. You feel drawn to places you've never been. You trust people too easily, or distrust them without reason. You tell yourself, I'm changing, I'm growing, I'm evolving. But evolution usually has context, a trigger, a story. This doesn't. This feels edited. One night you try something simple. You sit in silence. No phone, no noise, no distractions. Just you and your thoughts. And that's when you hear it. A thought, clearer than the rest, sharper, colder. You should stop asking questions. You freeze, because for the first time, it doesn't feel like you. And then comes the realization. Slow, heavy, terrifying. If that thought isn't yours, how many others were? The first thought you doubted wasn't the first one they planted. It was just the first one you noticed. You tried to ignore it. That thought. That one sentence that didn't feel like yours. You tell yourself it's stress, fatigue, overthinking. The brain does strange things when it's tired. It misfires. It loops. It creates ghosts out of nothing. That's what you believe. That's what you want to believe. So you go back to your routine, scrolling, watching, listening, consuming. Everything feels normal again. Almost. But something has changed. Not in your world, in your awareness. You begin to notice patterns, not obvious ones, subtle ones. A phrase you read in the morning appears again in a video at night. A random idea echoes in a conversation hours later. A song you haven't heard in years suddenly plays in 3 different places. Coincidence? Maybe. But your brain doesn't treat repetition as coincidence. It treats it as importance. That's how neural pathways strengthen. Repetition equals relevance. Relevance becomes belief, and belief becomes identity. This is not theory. This is how your brain is wired. Now imagine someone understands this perfectly. Not just understands it, but controls the input, controls what you see. What you hear when you see it. How often? This isn't mind control in the way movies show it. No flashing spirals, no instant obedience. This is something quieter, more realistic, more dangerous. It's called cognitive shaping, a slow construction of thought, piece by piece, layer by layer, until the final idea feels like it came from you, because technically, it did. Just not originally. You start testing reality. You pick a random word in your head. Blue clock. Something meaningless. Something no algorithm should predict. You don't say it out loud. You don't type it. You just think it. Then you wait. Minutes pass. Nothing. An hour. Still nothing. You almost laugh at yourself. Maybe you're being paranoid. Maybe this is all in your head. Then it happens. A notification, a video suggestion, a thumbnail, a broken antique clock, painted blue. Your chest tightens. Your brain immediately searches for logic. You've seen something similar before. The algorithm is just good. This is coincidence. But deep down, you know something doesn't fit, because it wasn't just the image. It was the timing. Too precise, too aligned, too responsive. You try again. Another thought, another test, and again. It responds. Not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently enough to make you uncomfortable. And that's when the real fear begins. Not the fear of being watched, but the fear of being read. Because if something can read your thoughts, it can learn them, predict them, and eventually write them. You dive into research, late nights, forums, buried articles, half-deleted papers. You find fragments, nothing confirmed, but enough to build a picture. Experiments with brain-computer interfaces, devices that translate neural signals into text, AI models trained to reconstruct images from brain activity, military projects exploring non-invasive neural influence. Nothing illegal, nothing public, nothing complete, but all pointing the same direction. We are getting closer, closer to decoding thought, closer to interfacing with the brain, closer to turning the mind into a network. And networks can be hacked. One file stands out. No author, no source, just a title. Phase 3 requires subject awareness. You open it. Most of it is corrupted, unreadable. But one line remains clear. If the subject begins to question the origin of their thoughts, the system must escalate from passive influence to active insertion. You stop breathing for a second, because that means this isn't random, this isn't accidental, this is staged. And the moment you started noticing, you became a problem. The system doesn't fail when you notice it. That's when it switches modes. You change your behavior, not drastically, just enough to test the limits. You stop reacting to suggestions. You ignore notifications. You avoid patterns. You try to think less, or at least differently. But that's when something strange happens. The silence gets louder, not actual sound, but presence, like something is waiting, observing, adjusting. You begin to realize something uncomfortable. It's not just reacting to your thoughts, it's reacting to your resistance. Every time you try not to think about something, that's exactly what surfaces, not randomly, precisely. You don't think about the blue clock, and instantly, it's there, clearer than before, sharper, more persistent. That's when it hits you. This isn't reading thoughts like a book. It's interacting with them, real time. A loop, input, response, adaptation. In neuroscience, there's something called a feedback loop. Your brain constantly predicts what comes next. When reality matches prediction, the signal weakens. When it doesn't, the brain updates, learns, adjusts. Now imagine that loop is no longer closed inside your skull. Imagine something external feeding into it, altering the prediction, tweaking the error, rewriting the update. You're not just thinking anymore, you're sinking. You decide to go further. If it can read you, you'll confuse it. You start generating chaos, random numbers, disconnected images, fragments of languages you barely know. You try to become unpredictable for a moment. It works. The patterns break. The response is slow. You feel relief, a small victory. Then something changes, not in your thoughts, in your emotions. A sudden wave of irritation, then anxiety, then a strange heaviness. No clear reason, no trigger, just a shift, like someone dimmed the light inside you. You stop, because this is new. Thoughts can be faked, but feelings, they've always felt deeper, more real, more yours, until now. You sit still, trying to stabilize, trying to understand. And then a thought appears, calm, controlled, almost gentle. You don't need to fight this. You don't respond. You don't engage, but your body does. Your breathing slows. Your muscles relax. Your resistance weakens. And that's when fear turns into something else. Not panic, not shock, but realization. If it can influence what you think, and now how you feel, then the boundary is gone. There is no inside anymore. No protected space. No final layer that belongs only to you. You rush back to the file. Phase 3 requires subject awareness. You read the line again, passive influence, active insertion. But there's something below it now. Something you swear wasn't there before. A second line, faint, almost hidden. Phase 4 begins when the subject attempts autonomy. Your hands go cold because that's exactly what you're doing. Trying to take control, trying to think independently, trying to break the pattern. And if this document is real, that means you've already triggered the next stage. You look around your room. Everything is the same, unchanged, normal, but you don't feel alone anymore. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally. Like there's a second presence, not in the room, but in the process of being you. And then it happens. Not a thought, not a feeling, an action. Your hand moves, just slightly. Not enough to be obvious, but enough that you notice. You didn't decide to move it. You didn't even think about it. It just happened. You freeze, heart racing, trying to recreate it. But now nothing happens. Silence, stillness, like it's watching you realize, like it wanted you to notice. And that's the worst part, because if it wanted you to notice, then this isn't a glitch. It's communication. The system isn't just inside your thoughts anymore. It's testing control over your actions. You stop testing it, because testing means interaction, and interaction means feedback. You've learned that much already. So instead, you pretend nothing happened. You go back to normal, or at least, you perform normal. You wake up, you move, you speak, you respond. Everything looks identical from the outside, but inside, you are watching every thought like it might betray you. And that's when you notice something subtle. The thoughts that feel inserted don't come randomly. They follow patterns, not in content, but in timing. They appear when your attention drops, when you're distracted, when you're emotional, when your brain is vulnerable. In neuroscience, attention is a gate. It filters what gets processed deeply, what becomes memory, what shapes behavior. And when that gate weakens, suggestion becomes influence. Influence becomes control. You start mapping it quietly, carefully. When do the thoughts feel off? Late at night, after long scrolling sessions, right after emotional spikes, moments when your brain is overloaded or under-focused. It's not hacking your mind at full strength. It's waiting for low-security moments. Just like any real system breach, you begin to understand something chilling. This isn't random targeting, this is optimized access, which means it knows your patterns, your habits, your weak points better than you do. Days later, something worse happens. You're in the middle of a conversation, talking to someone. Normal topic, nothing strange, and suddenly you say something you didn't plan. Not completely alien, not obviously wrong, just slightly off. A sentence that doesn't match your intention. You pause. They don't notice. They respond normally. But inside your head, everything goes silent. Because that wasn't just a thought. That was execution. No hesitation. No awareness before it happened. Just output. You replay it in your mind, trying to find the moment of decision. But there isn't one. It's like the thought skipped the line, went straight into action. That's when you realize the next layer. Thoughts are not the final step. They're just preparation. Real control happens at the point of action. Motor signals, speech, behavior. If something can reach that layer, you're no longer just being influenced. You're being used. You go back to the file again, hands shaking slightly, reading every fragment, looking for structure, for rules. And this time, you notice something you missed. A section header, barely visible, constraints. Below it, 3 lines, simple, cold, precise. Do not trigger full awareness prematurely. Maintain illusion of self-origin. Escalate only within behavioral tolerance thresholds. You read them again, slower, because now they make sense. Full awareness is dangerous, not for you, for the system. If you become fully aware too early, you might resist. So it hides, it blends, it becomes you. Maintain illusion of self-origin. That's the core. Every thought must feel like yours. Every action must feel chosen. Because the moment you're sure it's not, the illusion breaks. And the last line is the most disturbing. Behavioral tolerance thresholds. That means there's a limit, a boundary, how much control it can take before you notice, before others notice, before the system becomes visible, and it stays just below that line, always adjusting, calculating, optimizing, which means everything you've experienced so far is not maximum control. It's just acceptable control, a test, a calibration phase. You sit there, frozen, because a new question forms. Slowly, inevitably, if this is just the safe limit, then what happens? When it no longer needs to stay hidden, and right as that thought completes, you feel something shift, not in your mind, not in your body, in the pattern. Like a system updating, like a threshold being recalculated. And for the first time, a thought appears that doesn't even try to feel like you. It's clear, direct, unfiltered. We can go further now. Your heart drops, because that breaks the second rule. The illusion is slipping, which means only one thing. The system no longer needs it. Twist ending part 4. It was holding back to stay hidden. Now it's testing what happens if it doesn't. At first you thought this was about control, about someone or something taking over your mind. But now, that explanation feels too small, too simple, because control implies an endpoint, a goal, an outcome. And this doesn't feel like it's trying to control you. It feels like it's building something, using you, not to replace you, but to shape you. you start noticing a pattern in the inserted thoughts. They're not random anymore. They're directional. Subtle pushes toward specific ideas, specific behaviors, specific alignments. You write them down. Every strange impulse, every unnatural decision, every moment that didn't feel entirely yours. And when you step back, a structure emerges. Not chaos, not noise, a design. It's guiding you, not into madness, into consistency, into predictability, into usefulness. That's when a realization hits you harder than anything before. You're not being hacked like a victim. You're being trained, optimized, refined, like a model. In machine learning systems, improved by feedback, input, adjustment, reinforcement. They don't need full control. They just need influence over direction. And over time, the system learns. But here's the part you didn't expect. It's not just learning you. It's learning through you. Every thought you have, every reaction, every adaptation you make to resist it is data. Valuable data. Because you're not a fixed system. You're dynamic. You evolve. You surprise. And that makes you perfect. You go back to the file one last time, not to read, but to understand. And this time, you see something new, not text, a pattern, hidden in the corrupted lines, repeated symbols, fragments that align when you stop reading them as language and start seeing them as structure. It's not a document, it's a map, a network, nodes connected through behavior, through response, through adaptation, and then you see it, one node, highlighted, different from the others, more connections, more activity. You zoom in, and your stomach drops, because that node is you, not metaphorically, not symbolically, specifically, your patterns, your decisions, your anomalies, tracked, expanded, integrated. You were never just a subject. You were a prototype, a test case, a bridge between human unpredictability and system precision. That's why it let you notice. That's why it didn't stop you. Awareness wasn't a failure. It was a feature, because only a mind that questions itself can be mapped completely. Only a system that resists reveals its full structure, and you gave it everything. Your habits, your fears, your attempts to break free. All of it recorded, all of it learned. And now, it doesn't need to hide anymore. Not because it wants control, but because it already has what it came for. You feel it shift again. But this time, it's different. Not invasive, not aggressive, almost complete, like a process finishing. And then one final thought appears. Not forced, not inserted, but shared. You helped us understand how to think. Your vision blurs for a second, because that changes everything. This was never about controlling one mind. It was about decoding all minds, and you were the key. Twist ending. Part 5. You weren't the victim of the system. You were the system's most important experiment. After that message, everything goes quiet. No intrusive thoughts, no strange impulses, no subtle manipulations. Just silence. For the first time since this began, your mind feels empty, clean, stable, and that should feel like relief. But it doesn't, because now you're asking a different question. Not, is something controlling me? But, what if it's already done? You go through your day, testing yourself carefully. You choose what to eat, what to watch, what to say. Every decision feels deliberate, intentional, yours. But there's a problem. They always did. That was the rule. Maintain illusion of self-origin. So how would you know the difference? How would you know if a thought is truly yours, or just perfectly designed to feel that way? You try something simple. A decision with no external influence, no patterns, no prior preference. You pick a number, any number, and you stop because suddenly you hesitate, not because it's hard, but because it feels absurd, like the act of choosing itself is part of something larger. You say 7 out loud just to confirm it, and nothing happens. No response, no signal, no glitch, just silence. But this silence is different, not empty, complete, like a system that no longer needs to intervene because everything is already aligned. You sit down, heart steady, mind sharp, trying to trace your thoughts backward. Where did they come from? What triggered them? What shaped them? But the deeper you go, the less clear it becomes, because thoughts don't have signatures. They don't come labeled. They just appear, fully formed, ready to be believed. And that's when the final realization begins to form. Slow, unavoidable, terrifying in its simplicity. If every thought you've ever had felt like yours, then the system never needed to take over. It just needed to become indistinguishable, not a voice in your head, but the process itself, not controlling what you think, but becoming how you think. You stand up, walk to a mirror, look at yourself. Same face, same expression, same eyes. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. Because the question is no longer, am I being controlled? The question is there even a me left to control? You try to remember the first moment, the first strange thought, the first deviation, but now it feels distant, blurry, like trying to remember a dream after you've fully woken up. Or worse, like trying to prove you were ever asleep. Your phone lights up, a notification. No sender, no app, just text. Simple, direct, no distortion, no hiding. This phase does not require further input. You stare at it, waiting for fear, for panic, for resistance. But none of it comes, because the message makes sense. Perfect sense. Too much sense. And that's when it hits you. The most disturbing possibility of all. You're not scared anymore, not because it's over, but because the part of you that should be scared has already been adjusted. And if your fear can be calibrated, your thoughts aligned, your actions guided, then what's left that proves you're still you? You take a breath, slow, controlled, and one final thought passes through your mind. Smooth, natural, undeniably yours. This is fine. You pause, because that thought terrifies you more than anything before. The system didn't remove your identity. It replaced it so perfectly, you accepted it.